Okay, going live. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3. And that was quick. We're live on the Junius Maltby Channel. And I'm not going to waste a whole lot of your time with some bizarre extemporaneous rambling introduction, although you are here now, live on the Extemporaneous Ramblings of a Madman, broadcasting live on the Junius Maltby Channel. But I'm broadcasting with the COVID. So if you can get it, I wouldn't doubt it if they would claim that it can be transmitted through electronic means, through a microphone. But that's how dedicated I am to the channel. And I just wanted to let you guys know that how much BS I think it is, because I'm actually able to sit here and talk with you guys. I was down for a little bit, just on the mend, the last couple days, but I got it from Mrs. Maltby to show you how serious I took it. As soon as they showed us that she had a lab result for SARS-CoV-19, I gave her a big, wet, sloppy kiss, hoping to acquire it myself if I had not yet already, because I didn't know, hadn't really. We thought we might have had a run-in with it in the past, and apparently we hadn't. And she got it, I got it, but we had a good doctor give us some off-the-books, kind of, you could say, controversial medications, similar to the same route that Joe Rogan took. We were prescribed ivermectin from a physician. It came to us from a human pharmacy, from a human pharmacist. It's made for humans, by humans. Absolutely human medication. It comes in a pill form, different doses by weight for the two of us. I'm a firm believer in it because it seems like it kicked whatever this little illness's butt was pretty quickly. Also taking all of the vitamins D, C, zinc, quercetin, what else? D, C, zinc, quercetin, green tea.
I was pretty sick.
You were pretty sick day 2 or whatever.
The 30th and the 31st was my
Those are your fever days,
I
yeah.
actually thought I had meningitis. That's how bad my spine.
We thought you had influenza when we took you in.
It was bad.
Bad influenza,
it was
but
very, very, very bad.
whatever.
I was kind of like, damn.
So yeah.
Time to go. But I think the ivermectin helped me too.
For sure.
Like, we're both standing here talking.
I'm a firm believer in it. At this point, I think it did pretty good.
Yeah.
And I would recommend taking that route, getting a good doctor, if you could. And
those damn unvaccinated people like us.
Yeah. I'm glad I got natural immunity. I can tell you that much. The more reading, the more you look into it, the more you'll realize that natural immunity is absolutely the way to go. Well, let's not waste any more time on that because it's all BS. We know it.
We're better now.
And we're better now. We're getting better. And we'll be much better here shortly. And we're broadcasting live. So, hey, there you go. I can't actually fathom the fact that we're having to have a conversation on this. You know, last time we talked about this particular topic was, according to the screen here, 5 months ago. 5 months ago here on the Junius Maltby Channel. You know, that's back when everyone was saying inflation was transitory. It wasn't a problem. Piss, Aki, and Brandon, and everybody in D.C., the mainstream media, even other YouTubers and armchair economists, all of them were saying that, there's no such thing as inflation. It's not a problem. If it is there, it's transitory. We're not going to have to worry about it. You know the story. You know the thing. We've talked about this at length. It is a problem. We identified it as a problem. We knew it was going to be a long-term, persistent problem. We knew it was going to be worse than they said because we were looking at the real numbers, you guys and myself. And it's happening. It's now getting to the point in the evolution of this process, of which we also talked about, where they're discussing the Edict of Maximum Prices. Now, if you're not familiar with it, we did a video on this 5 months ago. There it is. It only got 1,700 views because no one really cares about the Junius Maltby Channel. It is shadow banned. You are in shadow ban land. The only way these videos get out there is if you like them, you hit the thumbs up, but if you share them and post them. I am hidden. I am essentially erased, non-existent. YouTube's doing me, I guess they think they're doing me a favor by letting me just limp along here, hidden from the side margins, never recommended in people's watch tabs or anything like that. It's essentially shadow banned. My comments are, a lot of you actually have experienced the same thing. I can see that your comments are shadow banned as well. Way you find that out, I've told you this before. If you go to the community tab and you click newest comment first on any of the posts, you'll see the individuals, myself included, Mrs. Maltby, a few of you, whose comments don't show up at all unless you click that. And that's a way to find out if a person is indeed shadow banned. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. This isn't like something in my head. Now, we're having this conversation because, again, you're on the tip of the spear, the edge of the knife. This is where it's real. This is where we're not going to hold the punches and read off a script. This is calling it for what it is, eviscerating and disemboweling the mainstream media, the narrative, the lies, seeing through the smoke and the mirrors, and the Wizard of Oz realizing it's just a man who's standing behind a curtain. This is all, again, by design. They're trying to lead people astray, trying to fool them, and they're getting most of the people for sure. Most people are buying it. They're believing the BS. They're dealing with it, and they just follow the state narrative. They follow whatever CNN or MSNBC is telling them to. ABC News, the mainstream garbage. But we are hurling towards a precipice and a very dangerous destination. It's a destination that many empires have arrived at. They no longer exist. They're buried in rubble, debris, and have gone extinct. They're in the history books. That's where they end up. That's where empires like this end up, in the history books. Time is a continuum. And we're moving on that continuum, and as we move forward, certainties come into existence, and reality happens to just exist. There's nothing we can do to defy certain laws of the universe and of physics. And some of the laws that exist out there are the laws that govern the way economics works, the way it functions, and all the variables therein. You know, the human behavior, the crowds and the demographics and the population groups around the world, their cultures, traditions, values, their instincts, their gut instincts, the store of labor, how people exchange for goods and services, what they choose to use, all of these things. It's pretty complex. I mean, we try to break it down here when we can. And, it's difficult to really dive into all of the different parts of economics because it's a complex thing. You can get different economists that have different opinions. But I just want to today take a moment to look at where we are on the continuum, on this timeline, and where we might end up, and revisit this, the Edict of Maximum Prices. I didn't think we'd have to talk about this. I didn't think it would happen so soon. Again, like I've told you before, it's worse than we think it is. At all times, it's always worse than I think it is. Every day that I wake up, every day that I read the news or a new headline, or hear the rambling babblings of these idiots, these quote experts, I just realized that it's worse than we actually thought. They're dumber than we thought. They're more inept than we thought. So if you get a chance, when this video is done, I put the link down below. Maybe you can do me a favor and you can go and watch the Edict of Maximum Prices, Silver and Inflation in Rome. Again, it's a video I did about 5 months ago. It's there. You can see it. It's right here. But for today, we're going to do this video, which is airing live. You're on it. Price controls. The Edict of Maximum Prices. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, it's in the news. It's in the news. They're actually talking about it. Brandon, the emperor, he is indeed, and his staff, his team of buffoons, they're actually discussing this. It's being recommended. And I'm going to show you a lot of headlines that expose what these people want to do with the economy here in the United States. Now, I've got the headlines pulled up in other tabs, but I want to first show you guys just an overall look. I typed in price controls on Google, right? A little quick search, click the news tab. Let's see what's going on in the world as far as the discussion regarding price controls. The first one that pops up is the article I posted in the community tab earlier today. New York Magazine writes, to combat inflation, the U.S. should impose price controls. I pulled that article up. We'll take a look at it. Who's afraid of price controls? This is the New York Magazine. That's the actual magazine article right there. And I think I pulled that one up just in case. I think I'll grab it. I'll right click on open a new tab just in case. I think we do have it opened up though. Yeah, because we're gonna want to look at what these idiots think. Okay, we're gonna want to know what these fools, these clowns, are proposing. Now, Reason Magazine 2 days ago, they did an article. It looks like here, price controls are the worst possible solution to inflation. So not everybody out there has lost their minds. There are outlets that identify the problems and the consequences of this crazy behavior. There's never a good time for price controls. This is from City Journal, and apparently it's written by an economist. You can just read the opening line here on the search tab. It says, I came of age as an economist during the Great Moderation, which lasted from the mid-1980s up to the financial crisis. So that's an article by that economist. As U.S. inflation skyrockets, White House blames monopolies, and economists call for price controls. Okay. So it's monopolies' fault, it's capitalism's fault, it's small businesses' fault. It's their fault. It's not the devaluation of the debasement of the currency, but at the hands of the state. No, it's the fault of the dollar store, right? Now, could strategic price controls help fight inflation? This is from The Guardian. To prevent inflation after World War II, America's leading economists recommended strategic price controls. So we're seeing many of the liberal outlets discuss this. It looks like there's a fight brewing in the trenches. The National Review saying, no, we shouldn't use price controls to fight inflation. So it's obviously, it's a point of contention. Obviously, it's going to be it's the new political football. It's going to be like everything else, like COVID, gun rights, abortion, back and forth, left and right. Everyone's going to freak out. And you'll have one side saying one thing they're saying the other. Junius over on the sidelines just saying accelerate. Do it. You know what I say? Do it. Do it. Let's make the price controls. I'm all for it. Junius Maltby supports price controls. Please, please. Do it on everything. Eggs, milk, bread. Please. Do it on everything. Initiate Operation Price Controls. Let's call it Operation Diocletian. We'll see if people can get it, if they understand it. I'm all about it. Why delay it? The inevitable. Let's just go for it. Like I've said before, accelerate. These people want to see where this goes. They want to see where this ends up. You guys need to stop fighting it and just let them do everything they want. The fastest way to get conclusion here, the most expedient and rapid way that we can arrive at our destination and start to rebuild from the ruins of a destroyed civilization is to allow the Democrats, the progressives, and the cultural Marxists to do whatever it is they want to do. It'll be painful.
And the Republicans.
And the Republicans, absolutely. The Republicans, look at what was his name? Boehner. That guy, that useless tool that existed in Congress for a while. And all of them. There's not a redeemable one on both sides of the aisle. They're all trash. They're all garbage. They're all corrupt. I believe that. I truly do. I believe they're all corrupt. They're all bought and paid for by different lobby groups, whether it's IPAC or anyone else, doesn't matter. The oil companies, the tech companies, they're all bought and paid for. They're all lobbied. There's no such thing as a republic anymore or anything. This whole situation is destroyed. So with that, I would just say accelerate. Give the left everything they want. Let them have it. Let them initiate the price controls and destroy the economy. Destroy the empire, destroy everything, break this place down. Finally, let's just do it. Come on. You guys done? It's painful, right? You're just sitting back watching it slowly. It's like fighting it. Come on. Just call it. Let it go. Let it go. Now we'll get into the articles here in a second, but real quick, the first one I'd like to do is the main event. Let's just start. We'll start there. This is actually the Intelligencer, New York. I don't know if I have a full-on subscription to this. I know I don't, as a matter of fact, because I wouldn't pay for it. But let's see how much of the article they actually let us view. Now I'm going to get this centered up for you on my little broadcast tool here, which is very low tech because I use it. Now, who's afraid of price controls? Who's afraid of them? Well, that's how they start this out. Like you're afraid, like you're weak if you fear it. You're afraid. Oh, why? What are you afraid of? Well, maybe economic collapse. I don't know. The cessation of all trade, the ending of all anything. I mean, the way the economy functions, the complete breakdown, like Rome did. We'll get to that later. Now, America is suffering from the fastest rise in consumer prices in nearly 4 decades. Whose fault is that? How'd that happen, huh? We've been talking about this. Come on. How'd that happen? The fastest rise in consumer prices in 4 decades. We've been talking about this, and they acted like it wasn't a problem. And now all of a sudden it's a problem that they denied was occurring. But suddenly, the very people in complete denial that there is an issue or a problem have somehow hatched a solution. Isn't that incredible to you? That the very people behind the problem, the very people exaggerating the problem, the very people causing the problem, the very people behind every policy, every act, every bill, and every piece of legislation that creates the problem, suddenly they believe it's they themselves who have also the solution. I just find that hilarious.
So
They shouldn't be anywhere near this. They should be removed from duty. They should not be allowed to touch any policy that is an attempt to stave off the disaster that they themselves have created. You know, it's like if you come up upon a situation, fill in the blank, come up with your own analogy, but you come up upon a situation where someone is just doing a hack job of on something. They're just destroying it. I don't know. Maybe it's like they're trying to hang a picture and they're just punching holes in the wall. They can't find the stud. They're busting holes in the sheetrock. They can't find a way to put a wall anchor in. They can't do anything. They're just destroying the place. And you walk up, you have a stud finder, or whatever, a nice wall anchor, and you end up hanging the picture for them. Very simple task. Very easy, right? You figured it out. You got it done. These people are destroying the house. They need to not be allowed to touch the tools anymore. It's time for people that are more capable, more competent to step in and acquire the tools to fix the problem. All right? Now, for months, inflation has been outpacing workers' nominal wage gains. Again, all of this is stuff you're going to know. You've already read. You've already heard it because we knew it. The Junius Maltby Channel called it. I mean, think about it. Not a lot of people did. We took a lot of heck for this for a long time. But over a year, 2 years now, we've been validated, vindicated. It's here. It's true. You can see it. The headlines are everywhere. For months, inflation's been outpacing nominal wages. We've talked about that, thereby depressing living standards, sowing financial anxiety, and raising the poll numbers of Americans' increasingly anti-democratic opposition party. It is possible that prices will stabilize in the new year. Global supply chains are slowly recovering. Oh yeah, they're going to talk about the COVID, of course. What I currently have, it's not a big deal. Domestic demand. Let's get to where they talk about the price controls, shall we? Policymakers should be doing more to mitigate inflation. Here we go. Who are policymakers, huh? Economists, the White House, Congress, their staff, all the people that work in the bureaucracies of D.C. So now let's see what the New Yorker is telling us to do, the New York Mag, this rag, this commie rag. Policymakers should be doing more to mitigate inflation and the deprivations it imposes. The deprivations it imposes? Now, is it inflation that's depriving people of things, or is it the politicians that cause the inflation? What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, inflation or politicians? That's a good question. That could be a shirt, Mrs. Maltby. What came first, inflation or politicians? But their tools for doing so are limited. How are these policymakers going to mitigate the deprivations of inflation? Look at the words they choose. In the United States, adjusting benchmark interest rates is the primary mechanism of price management, and we saw that today. The Fed is going to be doing a lot coming up. Of course, they're panicking. They're in a rock and a hard place, but the Fed's too late. They're also as incompetent and inept because they're part of the problem. They're part of the institutions and policies that created this. Again, you want to talk about having people try to fix a problem they themselves created. That's the Fed. That is entirely the Fed. The Fed is probably one of the biggest problem makers with this entire thing. Now, when inflation runs unacceptably high, the Federal Reserve raises rates, thereby increasing the cost of credit throughout the economy. This serves to temper demand, at least in theory, as borrowing costs go up. Consumers become less inclined to take out loans for the purchase of homes, cars, or other goods, while firms pull back on capital investment. And notice they said theory, because that's exactly what it is. It's a theory. Yet this instrument is imprecise, and it is of limited efficacy when deployed in moderation. Marginal increases in the interest rates are unlikely to significantly reduce demand. Large increases, meanwhile, come with nasty side effects. In the early 90s, Federal Reserve Chair Paul Volcker succeeded in breaking the back of inflation by raising prime interest rates to more than 20%. But the Volcker shock came at the cost of 2 recessions, the second one lasting 16 months. To make goods and services more affordable, in the aggregate, the government effectively rendered them less affordable for the most economically disempowered. Put 25 million Americans out of work, and consumer demand will fall. Meanwhile, massively increasing the cost of credit had other less anticipated and longer-lasting consequences for the American economy. The stratospheric interest rates on U.S. assets attracted an unprecedented influx of foreign capital, into the American economy, vastly expanding the nation's financial sector. At the same time, the dollar's resurgent strength rendered U.S. exports less affordable for overseas consumers, and thus less competitive in foreign markets, thereby devastating American manufacturing. Of course, those are the factors and variables in all of this that caused serious issues at this time. Now let's continue on. Where is it? Okay, for now, the Fed is not contemplating rate hikes remotely comparable to Volcker's. The negative side effects of the central bank's impending hike are unlikely to be severe, but they won't be negligible either. In recent years, mere indications of impending monetary tightening in the U.S. have caused foreign capital to flee emerging markets for safer American assets. Now, given the fragile economic condition of the United States, where did I fall off there? I can't even read it from here. I know it's COVID brain, exactly. Given the fragile economic condition of the many developing nations, which have less room to stimulate their economies and less access to, they're going to throw this in there, vaccines, than advanced nations, even small rate hikes could have serious consequences for the world's most vulnerable workers. Meanwhile, in the peculiar context of the 2022 economy, raising interest rates also threatens to exacerbate existing supply problems. Increasing construction firms' borrowing costs will not help ease America's housing shortage, nor will higher interest rates help auto companies rapidly expand the production of personal vehicles. All of which is to say the government's broadly accepted normal tools for managing inflation aren't great. That doesn't mean they should do price controls. But ladies and gentlemen, you realize this guy actually painted a pretty good picture of how screwed they are. This economy is so broken, they've run out of ways to fix it. Their normal tools don't work anymore. They're in a tight spot. This is what you're seeing right now are the death throes of a dying economy. These are the desperate attempts to save something that's unsavable. This is indispensable context for any debate over broadly dismissed unorthodox tools for managing inflation, such as price controls. On Wednesday, The Guardian published a case for using price controls to manage contemporary inflation, written by University of Massachusetts Amherst economist Isabella Weber. Okay, so we should listen to Isabella Weber. The piece was promptly pilloried on social media. To many lay observers and policy wonks alike, Weber's endorsement of price controls was tantamount to a declaration of economic illiteracy. It is. After all, rising prices typically reflect genuine scarcity. When demand for a good outpaces production, the price system effectively rations supply by ability and or willingness to pay. In that context, dictating lower prices by government order only masks the problem, and it does so at the cost of making the problem worse. For all the adverse implications of rising prices, they at least make the disparity between demand and supply visible to producers and provide them with an incentive to close the gap. By contrast, if the government dictates a price ceiling on a scarce good, it reduces the incentive of price firms to expand production. In invoking these points, Weber's critics highlighted genuine hazards of price controls, particularly ones that lack precision or complementary supply-enhancing policies. Yet, as already observed, our existing approach to managing inflation has plenty of hazards of its own. The widespread tendency to dismiss price controls of any kind as economically illiterate while defending interest rate hikes as economically wise reflects custom more than reason. You get that? They're saying you guys are just doing this as customs, not because it's reasonable.
Oh, like tradition.
Out of tradition, yes. Now, we wouldn't be in this problem. The thing is, we wouldn't be in this problem and having to figure out a way out of it if they hadn't put us here. Does that make sense? To be fair to Weber's critics, her case for price controls is fatally undermined by its brevity and dearth of detail. The Economist does not acknowledge the potential pitfalls of price controls or anticipate skeptics' arguments. More critically, she never specifies precisely which prices the government should set. Weber builds her argument around the precedent of American price controls during World War II. She notes that many of America's most distinguished economists, which most of the time the most distinguished economists are wrong. They always get it wrong. They argued for the maintenance of controls during the transition to a post-war economy, which was wrong. Summarizing their case, she writes, as long as bottlenecks made it impossible for supply to meet demand, price controls for important goods should be continued to prevent prices from shooting up. She then suggests that a similar principle be applied to the current transition to a post-pandemic economy. So she's treating this like it's a post-World War II economy. Now listen, there's too many articles. There's too much to discuss here and read on the price controls. You guys can check out the New York Mag article on your own, on the Intelligencer, but we need to move on to kind of break this down and look at the opposing view. We get it, right? This economist, in a very vague way, is talking about price controls as being a viable way out of this. Now, many economists and many who discuss these things don't believe that. And, of course, history is on their side. You'll see articles like this one. No encore, please. Price controls were a bad idea in the 20th century and even more so today. This is another piece from January 4th, 2022. And this is, again, about price controls not being a good idea, not being the solution to this problem. Now, even worse, I'm going to read this part here. Some economists are now considering price controls to combat inflation. There was a time as recently as last week when nearly all economists agreed that price controls don't work, and they rank among the greatest policy failures of the 20th century. I would say also the 3rd century. That's because prices often rise when demand increases faster than supply. Price controls do nothing to temper demand. All they bring are more shortages and reduced incentives for suppliers to find ways to produce more goods and substitutes, prolonging the cause of inflation and shortages. It also threatens trade entirely. It can shut down trade, which we saw with Rome. Now, all this is common sense now, but a generation ago, it was a hard lesson to learn. Even some of the best economists of the 20th century, including Paul Samuelson and Irving Fisher, argued for price controls, a low point in their careers. We seem doomed to forget this lesson. Last week, The Guardian published an op-ed from an economist arguing for price controls. New York followed up this week by arguing that price controls are superior to monetary policy because they are a more precise way to deal with rising prices. So The Guardian and the New York, we just saw that. We just saw both those. We just discussed them. We're seeing that there's a little bit of a behavioral shift. It's become acceptable. Economist James Galbraith via Modern Monetary Theory advocate Stephanie Kelton on Twitter also argued that price controls are not bad. Again, of course, the Modern Monetary Theory clowns show up. We might be tempted to dismiss them as just a few heterodox thinkers, but the idea appears to be gaining traction, as terrible ideas do in challenging times. Some prominent Democrats and members of the Biden administration blame rising prices on the greed of large corporations. They point to rising profits as evidence that a sudden increase in greed, not changing economic conditions, is driving inflation. This line of argument creates an economic case for price controls and breaking up big firms to tackle inflation. They may not be arguing explicitly for price controls now, but threats of antitrust and other sources of pressure on large firms from the White House appear to be intended to keep firms from raising prices with inflation. Many blamed greed for rising prices in the 20th century also. But price controls didn't work then, and they won't work now. Even if the economy has changed, yes, big firms dominate the economy more today, and many are quite profitable.
What, like Pfizer?
Pfizer, Moderna.
Oh.
But this was true long before inflation took off. And this reality is no argument for price controls. If anything, the changing market structure makes price controls an even worse idea now than it was 50 years ago. Bigness can create greater efficiency, and efficiency is critical to surviving in a technology-driven global economy. Globalization and technology also make greed-driven gouging harder than ever because consumers can search the internet for lower prices. Even with fewer providers in the marketplace, consumers still have more power. More than ever, prices reflect clear signals about market supply and demand, not greed. It's very true. Think about how quickly, when you're shopping online, how quickly you can find and compare prices and buy the cheaper of the two. It's incredible, actually, today. I think consumers, like this is saying, we have it the best we've ever had it when it came to finding the best price. Which means that price controls, if imposed, could prove even more harmful than before. A big profitable firm won't go out of business when faced with price controls, even if its motive to supply more products is undermined. But price controls would land yet another fatal blow to small businesses. And that's why this makes sense, because the Brandon administration hates small business. The Democratic Party hates small business. They truly do. So this would make sense. If they knew that the outcome and the consequences of this would be destroying small businesses, that's been their motivation throughout this entire crisis. For the last 2 years, we have seen nothing but an all-out assault on small business, and small business has done nothing to fight back. Nothing. Think of California, New York, the blue states, how quickly their businesses were shuttered, destroyed, shut down. And then you look at states like Texas and Florida, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Nevada, other states where there was less draconian, tyrannical rules placed upon them, less assaults. You see, the Democrats hate your business. They hate you. They hate freedom and liberty. It's true. They truly do. They despise it. They condescend to it. They resent it. Now, price controls were a bad idea in the last century. They were, and I don't know why no one's bringing this up about Rome. I haven't seen an article that talked about it yet, other than Lou Rockwell. We'll get to that, and von Mises guys. Next article. As inflation skyrockets, the White House blames monopolies, and their economists are calling for price controls. They got this idiot. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. This guy right here. Unbelievable. It's everywhere. It's all over the news. Now, a while back, I talked about this. I brought this article to your attention. We read through it. I believe, again, I've covered the Edict of Diocletian. It's on the channel. The link's in the description of this video if you want to go back and watch it. We cover it. We read through it. Now, this is from 2018. Now, the Edict of Diocletian, a case study in price controls and inflation by Murray Rothbard. Good piece, good read. It's right here, Mises.org, Mises.org, however you want to pronounce it. I'm going to read through a little bit of it. As a matter of fact, I might be able to read the whole thing because it's short enough. And let's just do it again because, this is an important topic of conversation. And although I have COVID, although I'm sitting here as a disease-ridden broadcaster live
I had to get a cough out.
in my last years of existence, my last hours perhaps, because I'm dying. I'm dying of COVID. As I sit here dying of COVID, I will warn you all of the Edict of Maximum Prices.
Who's going to die first, me or you, though?
I don't know.
I was doing poorlier than you in the beginning.
You were doing much but I've had the worst night sweats and fevers.
I know, those were pretty
Murray Rothbard. Here we go. Citizens of the old Roman Empire distrusted paper currency and refused to accept anything but gold or silver coin as money. So the rulers found themselves barred from inflating the money supply by the unobtrusive method of printing additional currency. Sound familiar? But the Roman emperors soon discovered an ingenious device. They proceeded to call in the coins of the realm, ostensibly for repairs. Then, by various means, such as filing off small parts of the coins, or reducing cheaper alloys, which we saw commonly done, or even plating, they reduced the silver content of the money without changing its original face value. Again, think Gresham's Law. Now you have competing currencies circulating out there, both showing the same face value, but obviously the competing circulating currencies having different intrinsic values because they have different metal contents. Now, you know what happens, right? The good metal gets hoarded out of existence, the real money, the sound money, and the cheaper, dross-filled, less valuable alloyed coins will continue to circulate. They reduced the silver content of the money without changing its original face value. This devaluation enabled them to add many more silver coins to the Roman money supply. This is inflation. They increased the amount of coins circulating. This is basic stuff. The practice was started by Nero and accelerated by his successors. By Diocletian's time, the denarius, the standard silver coin, had been reduced to 1/10 of its former value. I've showed you these coins on this channel live. We've done videos of them. And we have also, again, discussed this and showed you these coins, how they relate to inflation in the Roman Empire and what it caused. I've done a lot of videos on the demise of the Roman Empire and what inflation did to them. If you've been on this channel for the last decade, you're familiar with those videos. If not, I encourage you to go back into the archives and check out some of the discussions that surround the collapse of the Roman economy. Now, the result of this, again, what we just talked about, of reducing the denarius, the coin of the realm, to be 1/10 of its former value, the result was a steep rise in prices. That's obvious, makes sense to us. In hindsight, it's like, oh, of course that would happen. Now, throughout the vast Roman Empire, think of how big it was, the time of that, what was going on globally in that particular part of the human timeline in history. Just imagine steep prices rising throughout the Roman Empire. Again, it was the world as they knew it at the time. Now, as happened throughout history, the public indignantly accused merchants and speculators of causing the rise in prices. See, it's a very primitive mindset. You can almost say that the people today, like in D.C., like Brandon and his staff, and Pisaki and Kamala and all these idiots, they have a very Bronze Age mindset. They're like a Bronze Age illiterate, just staggering through the primitive world. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know about science or anything. They immediately clutch their rock and their stick and they go, oh, blame man who sell thing at market. Him bad. Him charge more for food. They're very primitive. They're very ignorant people. And that makes sense. I would expect nothing more than a very, very primitive, uneducated, very illiterate, almost ignorant of history. No real knowledge depth. I would expect that of the people making decisions today. So it doesn't surprise me at all. It really, truly should not surprise you either. Now, the result in this steep price rises, now they indignantly, they blamed the merchants. We saw that, yes. It was generally agreed that the only remedy was stringent maximum price controls by the government. Accordingly, Emperor Diocletian, quote, a friend of the people, issued his famous edict in 301 AD, setting the ceiling prices on all types of commodities. You can actually read it. The thing exists in stone tablets. It's been translated. You can read the Edict of Maximum Prices. It still exists. And it was a maximum prices and maximum wages for all occupations. A few typical examples that are in this article. Beans were crushed, 100 denarii. Beans uncrushed, 60 denarii. Beans dried kidney beans, 100 denarii. Veterinary, for clipping the hooves of a horse, 6 denarii per animal. A veterinarian for bleeding heads, 20 denarii per animal. A writer for best writing, 25 denarii per 100 lines. Interesting, right? A writer for writing of the second quality, 20 denarii per 100 lines. Diocletian's proclamation introducing the edict bears marked resemblance to modern exhortations. And I believe I read this to you guys before. We should read it again. It sounds very similar to something that modern politicians would say. Now, this is a direct translation of this. So, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me thine ears. Should I read this in my Roman voice?
Yes.
All right, I will. Okay.
Can you wait? But don't make sure you don't aggravate the COVID.
Okay. We must check the limitless and furious avarice, which with no thought for mankind hastens to its own gain. This avarice, with no thought of the common need, is ravaging the wealth of those in extremes of need. we, the protectors of the human race, have agreed that justice should intervene as arbiter, so that the solution which mankind itself could not supply might, by the remedies of our foresight, be applied to the general betterment of all. You can hear that, right? It sounds, you can just picture some guy in a toga, his little olive branches around his head, his arm extended outward, believing he's the protector of the human race. Again, the thing, he thought he was God, the emperors. They thought they were gods. And I'm not kidding. Think of the people today that are in politics. They think they're above the law. They think they're above you. They're above reproach. They can do whatever they want. They actually believe and act as if they're gods. They think they're gods. Very similar. I've drawn the comparisons before. You've seen it. The temples, the architecture, the Greco-Roman architecture, all of it. I'll read the rest of it normal. Now, in the markets, this is them still reading it. Trevor Ham, thanks for the super chat. Gotta love the Roman voice. You want me to keep going with it? Okay, I'll keep going. Trevor, for you. I'll do the Roman voice for you. In the markets, immoderate prices are so widespread that the uncurbed passion for gain is so lessened by abundant supplies. Men whose aim it always is to profit, to restrain general posterity. Men who individually, abounding in great riches, which could completely satisfy whole nations, try to capture smaller fortunes and strive after ruinous percentages. Concern for humanity in general persuades us to set a limit to the avarice of such men, profiteers, covertly attacking the public welfare, are extorting prices from merchandise such that in a single purchase a soldier is deprived of his bonus and salary. Break that down psychologically. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much here. It's crazy. Boom. You've got the potentate. You've got this Caesar, this godlike politician who believes he's the man of the people, right? Appealing to patriotism. He immediately brings in the soldiers, the troops in there. Think of the troops. Their bonus and salary. Oh, that's costing them too much money. The poor troops, the poor soldiers. Think of how often that's used today. They're used as like political pawns. You know, who's liked the troops more? Who does more for the troops? Who does more for the veterans? It's back and forth. So he's throwing them in there, using them immediately, right? He's blaming these greedy merchants and these men, these capitalists, for driving prices up. And out of concern for humanity, he has to do this. This is exactly right out of the playbook of the horrible politicians today. It's unbelievable. Let's continue on the edict, the opening part of the edict. Therefore, we have decreed that there be established a maximum, so that when the violence of high prices appears anywhere, avarice might be checked by the limits of our statute. To ensure adequate enforcement, anyone who shall violate this statute shall be subject to a capital penalty, which is death, by the way. The same penalty shall be applied to any who in the desire to buy shall have conspired against the statute with the greed of the seller. That means if you buy things that violate the edict, you also would be punished. Think of that. If you make a deal on the side with a merchant to buy something for what is the free market price outside of what the edict is, you also would be punished. This is the government intrusion. This is what the state loves to do. This is the Democratic Party in a nut. Yes, Mrs. Maltby.
Never mind.
What? I'm almost done with this reading here. I couldn't hear you. You have to write a note down.
I'm not writing a note.
Okay. Greeted the seller. Where am I at? Where did I leave off here? What did I just leave off? Okay. I'm at, the same shall the agree to the seller, also subject to the death penalty is he who believes he must withdraw his goods from the market because of this regulation. Think of that. The death penalty if you decided to not sell your goods anymore. Imagine this for a minute. You're selling wheat. You're a farmer. And all of a sudden, Diocletian says, all right, maximum prices on wheat are this amount of denarius. You're like, I can't do that. That's a huge loss. You pull your wheat from the market. They come and kill you. Again, that's the party. That's the government in a nutshell. That's what the feds want to do. You don't play by the rules. What do I always tell you? What do I always say? If you disobey the state, men with guns will come to your house and either kill you or put you in a cage. Now, in these times, they would come with a gladius and a cohort, You know, you'd send there'd be some Roman soldiers would come outside that had their shields, their gladiuses, and they would either kill you or throw you in a coliseum, or they had other things. Maybe you'd be on a slave ship rowing a boat for the rest of your life until you got whipped to death. There were, they had different means back then. Not all. It's funny because if I was a Caesar, I would probably employ some of these today. I would love to whip people in the holes of triremes. It's just I would have to pick who they are. Can you guys imagine seeing Pelosi and Schumer? Can you imagine that? Just
Fauci.
chained, and Fauci just chained to an oar.
I'd have him eat.
I would love it. I would love it.
I'd have Fauci eaten by sandflies in a coliseum.
Row well and live. Row well and live. That's what I would tell them. Yeah, that's what I tell them. Hey, Chuck, row well and live. Row well. We should watch Ben-Hur soon, Miss Maltby. Have you seen that movie ever?
No.
You've never seen Ben-Hur?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. I'm about as serious as
Ladies and gentlemen of the Junius Maltby Channel, we interrupt this program for an emergency announcement. Breaking news. Mrs. Maltby's never seen Ben-Hur, which means that's what we're watching tonight.
There's totally people in the chat who have not seen it.
Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to interrupt this program. I just can't imagine.
Is it a film that would be... Is it something that I would want to see as my last film before I die of the COVID?
You're going to want to watch it. It's a good movie.
Did you just take a note in your phone?
No,
so
it's
that
a
we
beautiful
remember
movie.
to watch
It's a
it?
beautiful film. It's a classic. It's a classic, incredible
How old is
film.
it?
It's a good... Charlton Heston's in it. It's a good movie. It's in color.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. You're going to watch it. Goodness. I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't know. The soundtrack, the March of the Roman... There's soundtracks, there's scores of music in that movie that are literally the soundtracks I would use if I was ever elected to power. If I ever became like my own dictator or Caesar or whatever, I would use some of the march music from that movie.
Nobody's seen it in the chat. You're weird.
That's not true. A lot of people in the chat have seen it. I guarantee it. I'm disturbed.
Taking down Christmas stuff to check the chat.
Okay, I got to get back. I got to finish this. We got some more tabs to go through. This video's going too long. I've got COVID. Leave me alone. I can't talk. I'm dying. I'm breathing. I'm dying.
I gave it to you. You're welcome.
Call 911. I can't breathe. I wonder what my O2 set is. I sound fine though, right? Believe it or not, this is me with COVID. 100% full energy. Loving it. Living it. Big fan of the ivermectin. Take it. The same penalty shall apply. Okay, we got that part. We urge upon the loyalty of all that a law constituted for public good may be observed with obedience and care. If anyone could force people to trade at the ceiling prices, Diocletian was the man. Yet the absolute emperor of the civilized world, a veteran general with myriads of secret police at his command, just like today, was soon forced to surrender. After a short interval, almost nothing was offered for sale. Think of this. It broke the economy, and there was a great scarcity of all goods. Diocletian was obliged to repeal the price-fixing edict. Prices were finally stabilized in 307 AD when the government stopped diluting the money supply. That's the solution. That's the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, you read it right there. They need to stop diluting the money supply. That's it. You want to fix the problem? End the Fed. You want to fix the problem? Reduce the money supply. Start burning dollars in circulation. Pull it out of existence. Reduce the amount of circulating dollars. Peg it to silver and gold. Come up with sound money again. That's how you fix inflation. That's it.
Junius?
Yes.
I do have to bring this up. The
What?
new civil defense says that Ben-Hur won a record 11 Academy Awards.
Yeah, it's an incredible movie. I think it's got one of the... It was a record still.
I don't believe that.
It's one of the greatest movies ever made.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
I watched it probably 20 times as a kid. I used to time travel into it. I used to picture myself living in ancient Rome. And I wrestled with the fact that I both wanted to be a Roman soldier, but I also, I felt for Judah Ben-Hur and his plight and his family and how they suffered under the hands of, these statist tyrants. But I felt like, hey, if I wanted to statist tyrants, maybe it ain't so bad if I'm oppressing people, But
Wow.
I learned a lot. I'm telling you, I didn't agree with it. It was that little wrestling of a little boy who's Italian who felt himself being Roman and drawn to the glory of Rome. I was drawn to the glory of Rome.
I was
Power,
never,
Judah, real power.
I was never. I
not
came from a non-statist
that.
country.
And anyone who's seen the movie will remember that scene. It's a pivotal scene in the movie when Judah's talking to his Roman friend, childhood friend he grew up with, and they're discussing things, and he's like, I'm talking about power, Judah. Real power, not that. He's referring to Judah Ben-Hur's religion, Judaism. But again, it's a beautiful movie. I can't wait to watch it with Mrs. Maltby. It's going to be great. The Edict of Diocletian, Fixing Maximum Prices. Here is a scholarship from UPenn. This is a whole article about it. Again, lengthy. I could put this, I will save this link as well and put this into the description of the video. Again, there's a large discussion on it on Wikipedia as well. You can look up the Edict of Maximum Prices. You can see the tablets, actually pictures of the real deal. I mean, there they are right there. If you guys can read stamped tablets, here we go. Let me just pull a picture of it up. Come on, open up, boom. There you go. That is the Edict of Maximum Prices, ladies and gentlemen. You guys see it? Right there in front of your face on the screen. There you go. Here is another paper on it. The Edict of this is from English translation. This is the actual English translation of the Edict of Maximum Prices. And you can read through it. It discusses it extensively. Now, why, Junius, why are you bringing this up? Why you keep talking about the Edict of Maximum Prices? Well, the reason is because it was an attempt to do what they're trying to do now. It didn't work, and it caused serious problems in the Roman economy and helped lead to some of the incipient parts of its collapse. And it really worked towards eroding and destroying and creating massive hurdles for an already crippled economy. So there you go.
It didn't help that the place was crawling with big-headed Italians.
It didn't help that it was crawling with big-headed Italians. That's true. That's true. Justin Kuhn says, you got a book coming, Mr. in the mail, Junius. Thank you, Justin Kuhn, channel member. I appreciate that. Looking forward to it. And that reminds me, I did thank many of you before for the Christmas gifts and cards and those things. I got to tell you, again, very much appreciated. Thank you for the kindness, the generosity, the thoughtfulness. Some of you even sent, I guess, a PayPal donation, and I got to say, I tried to find the email address to be able to respond to that and to reply to you. I could not find it.
It keeps it private.
It must be private in PayPal. But I just want to say to all of you on the Junius Maltby channel, each channel member, each Patreon member, even if you're neither or, and you sent a card or just, I just got to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys really touched Mrs. Maltby and myself, and we know who each and every one of you are. Thank you. But that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Who's afraid of maximum prices? Price controls? I'm not. I'm not afraid of it at all. I look forward to it. I'm actually excited by all this. Keep stacking. Abdiel Lawrence, my friend, good friend over there in Europe, sending some euros. Thank you for the super chat. He goes, it would be nice if Americans rose up like Kazakhs. But Kazakhs know what gender they are. They do. There's a lot of people over there in the East that a little bit stronger than Americans. Americans can't, they're not good at a lot of this. Think about it. Look where we are, Abdiel. Come on. Americans have a Bronze Age mindset. They're going to try to do price controls. They're stupid. Americans are stupid. They're lazy. They're entitled. They're pretentious. They think they're privileged. That they somehow were immune to the effects of these things. That we're immune to economic law, to history. So everyone, please throw down the Amerimut emoji. If you're on this channel, you have access to emojis. You know which one I'm talking about. Let's go. Let's find it. Where's it at? Mrs. Maltby, I got it. There it is. There we go. Come on. I'll just send a couple of those out for good luck. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. All of you. I just want to say thanks for tuning in to the Junius Maltby channel. Thanks for being part of this broadcast.
Thanks for bearing with us these last 4 days as we've
fought COVID.
Fought valiantly
the Omicron.
But do you think we had the flu-rona, though?
I don't know. They don't know what variant it is, but
But it could have been the flu-rona.
All they said on your lab result was SARS-CoV-19 positive, whatever. So, and you didn't have any flu markers. There was no flu. It said flu influenza negative completely.
Yeah, not a singular one.
So, anyways, love y'all. Thank you for everything. Mimaru. Thank you, Mimaru. Valued, wonderful Canadian grandmother channel member.
Yes.
Bless all of you. Thanks for tuning in. And I wish you all a good night. I'm going to try to go talk Mrs. Maltby into watching Ben-Hur. Take care of yourself.